In the inventory description of the imperial treasury in Vienna, dated March 13, 1938, the object numbered 155 is listed as a composite item made of iron, silver, and gold, known in historiography as the Hofburg Spear or the Spear of St. Maurice. This artifact consists of a tip 507 millimeters long, made up of two halves joined by iron wire, into the center of which is forged a wrought nail. According to legend, one of the instruments of the crucifixion. From the perspective of paleography and material analysis, the most valuable source of information is not the legends, but three inscriptions on the golden and silver sheaths of the shaft, which record the stages of its political legitimation. Before we move on to a detailed analysis of the institutional hunt for this object, which shaped the contours of European politics for 1,000 years, I ask you to subscribe to our channel and rate this research to support the development of quality documentary content. Your engagement allows us to continue working with the archives and restoring historical truth without mystical distortions. An analysis of the political anatomy of the Carolingian Empire in the 8th and 9th centuries shows that the Spear of Longinus, then called the Spear of St. Maurice, was a key element of Charlemagne's itinerant chancellery. In the absence of a permanent capital and centralized state apparatus, the monarch's power was perceptual. It existed where the king and his regalia were physically present. According to the materials of the Annals of the Kingdom of the Franks, the artifact was constantly moved between the Aachen Palace and numerous falzes. The logistics of this movement were strictly regulated. To ensure the safety of the tip and the accompanying relics, a detachment of 50 elite cavalrymen was used, whose maintenance fell on the shoulders of local communities. The most important document for understanding the economics of this process is the Capitulary on Estates, Capitulare de Villis, compiled around 800. It details the duties of managers of royal villas in receiving the court. Analysis of chapters 40 and 41 shows that each estate was required to maintain stocks of food and fodder sufficient to support the royal train, transporting the state relics. The financial flows directed toward maintaining this infrastructure effectively formed the framework of the future European postal and administrative system. In this system, the spear functioned as a visual marker of the presence of law. In places of its temporary location, it's temporarily protected of the royal death. In this process that the royal middles funtrade even the capsules from for royal capital. In places the dispended fried the capsule in the court. In this system, the places its temporarily fund the presence of law. In this to the transported of the presence of law was realized sub many times of truth in the European villas into littering food and agreed 7 point. In this system, the conservation convinced of experience results the presence of law to the child that may not involved below. If they're conservated in child prevent, the result of considered mental ground in package of its temporer as a just fine frame. The presence of law developed programs without the capsules below. In this system, the child is apprising of quote is approaching the other postal train and information, today the power. But it cries they're successful, it made highlightful the system, but in the question of the blow, the Charles are find out by the justice from the train and the impurity of location. Places of its temporary location, courts were held and vassal oaths were taken. After the dissolution of the Carolingian Empire, control over the artifact became a matter of legal survival for the East Frankish kings. In the system of medieval law, possession of this item signified the presence of investiture. According to the Chronicle of Liutprand of Cremona, Henry I the Fowler in 926 entered into complex diplomatic negotiations with Rudolph II of Burgundy. The subject of the bargaining was precisely the spear. In exchange for this iron tip, Henry ceded the city of Basel and extensive territories in southern Germany. From the standpoint of state auditing, this was one of the most expensive territorial deals in the history of the early Middle Ages. The cost of the artifact was equivalent to the aggregate income of an entire region over 10 years, which confirms its status as a state asset of the highest category. In 955, during the battle on the Lech River, Otto I used the spear as a coordination center for managing the troops. This was a pragmatic use of the symbol of power to maintain discipline among the knighthood. In the conditions of complex topography and the absence of operational communications, the spear served as a landmark around which the reserve was formed, deciding the outcome of the battle against the Hungarians. Of particular interest to the researcher is the era of Charles IV in the mid-14th century, when the Spear of Longinus was integrated into the complex system of legal safeguards for the empire. In 1356, the Golden Bull was issued, the principal law of the Holy Roman Empire, which fixed the procedure for the election of the emperor by the 7 electors. Analysis of the bull's text in the context of preserving the imperial insignia shows that Charles IV sought to create a legal monopoly on the possession of the regalia. It was precisely during this period that the artifact underwent technical modification. To reinforce the cracked iron tip, a golden sheath was fitted over it, with the Latin inscription, "Spear and Nail of the Lord." This was not an act of piety, but an inventory correction, securing the item's status in the international law of the time. To ensure the physical preservation of the spear, Charles IV initiated the construction of Karlštejn Castle near Prague. According to construction reports and estimates from 1348 to 1365, the castle was designed not as a residential residence, but as a specialized storage vault. The central tower was equipped with walls more than 4 meters thick, and the Chapel of the Holy Cross, where the spear was kept, featured a 4-tiered protection system. Iron doors with 3 locks, the keys to which were held by different officials, a permanent garrison of 30 crossbowmen, and an internal lighting system that allowed the guards to monitor the perimeter around the clock. Access logistics were so stringent that even the highest imperial officials could view the spear only once a year during an official ceremony. Karlštejn became the first state repository in Europe where the security system took precedence over architectural aesthetics. In 1424, Emperor Sigismund, confronted with the threat of the Hussite Wars and the need to concentrate financial resources, decided to transfer the imperial regalia for eternal storage to the free city of Nuremberg. This act marked the beginning of a 500-year period of municipal control over the spear. To manage the artifact, the Society for the Storage of Holy Relics was established, consisting of the city's most influential patricians. Guard duty instructions preserved in the Nuremberg City Archive mandated hourly checks of the seals on the casket. In the Church of the Hospital of the Holy Spirit, where the spear was housed, an armored chamber was constructed, a suspended basket above the altar equipped with a lifting mechanism. Nuremberg's financial reports for the period from the 15th to the 18th century demonstrate significant expenditures on maintaining this system. The city allocated funds for the annual relic exhibition, Heiligtumsweisung, which was not only a religious event but also a major economic one, attracting thousands of merchants. However, the city's primary goal was to preserve its status as the guardian of imperial law. When, in 1796, the troops of revolutionary France approached the borders of Franconia, the Nuremberg magistrate faced a logistical dilemma. According to secret correspondence from that time, the burgomaster ordered the immediate evacuation of the regalia to prevent them from becoming a tool of legitimation for Napoleon Bonaparte. The spear was hidden in a cart under a layer of manure and hay, evading the patrols of French intelligence. Moving on to the analysis of Napoleon Bonaparte's expansion at the beginning of the 19th century, we see a radical paradigm shift. For Napoleon, who sought the complete deconstruction of the old order, the seizure of the imperial regalia was an act of administrative absorption. In 1805, after the victory at Austerlitz, French commissioners received a direct order to find and seize the Habsburg treasures. In response, the Austrian Chancellor Clemens von Metternich initiated a process that in diplomatic circles was called the legal death of the empire. In his correspondence, Metternich emphasized that without physical possession of the spear and the crown, Napoleon could never declare himself the legitimate successor to Charlemagne in the eyes of the German aristocracy. The logistics of the evacuation were meticulously planned. The Spear of Longinus, along with the other insignia, was packed into double wooden crates labeled Household Inventory of Baron von Hugel. The evacuation route ran through Regensburg, Passau, and Linz to Vienna. The convoy consisted of 12 trusted individuals in civilian clothes, operating under the guise of a trading caravan. Reports from the Vienna police record that the cargo arrived in the Austrian capital deep at night and was immediately placed in the secret cellars of the Hofburg. Napoleon, who had deployed a network of informants, was never able to intercept the regalia. In 1806, Francis II officially announced the dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire, thereby transforming the spear from an active political symbol into a museum piece of the Austrian crown. This was a masterful move by Metternich. By depriving Napoleon of access to the artifact, he forced him to create a new, less stable symbolic system. In the 20th century, the history of the Spear of Longinus takes on its most distorted form in mass culture, however. The documentary reality remains emphatically prosaic. After the Anschluss of Austria in 1938, the Third Reich initiated the procedure for repatriating the imperial treasures to Nuremberg. In this process, it was not the mystical SS order that participated, but the bureaucratic apparatus of the Ahnenerbe and the Ministry of the Interior. Order number 842/38 prescribed transferring the regalia for storage to St. Catherine's Church. Hitler saw in the spear not a magical staff, but an instrument of historical revisionism, confirming Germany's right to dominance. Documents from the SS Operational Department show that the guarding of the artifact was carried out by security service units, and access to it was granted only to certified historians and the highest party leadership. Surviving invoices exist for the installation of modern alarm systems and temperature control in the storage facility. When in 1944, the intensity of the bombings on Nuremberg increased, a decision was made to relocate the spear to a concrete bunker beneath the city fortress. The logistical operation to move 331 items of the imperial treasury was conducted under the strictest secrecy by Luftwaffe engineers. The entrance to the bunker was disguised as an ordinary garage and equipped with a code system known only to 5 high-ranking city officials. A critical audit of the failure of Nuremberg's defense in April 1945 allows for the reconstruction of the chronology of the artifact's capture. On April 30th, units of the 3rd American Army discovered the entrance to the underground storage facility. The discovery of the regalia was recorded in the official report of the U.S. Army's Monuments, Fine Arts, and Archives section. Lieutenant Walter Horn, a professional art historian, conducted the initial identification. His report states that the condition of the spear matched the descriptions in the 1938 catalogs. In 1946, the American administration returned the regalia to the Austrian Republic. The transfer of the property was accompanied by the preparation of a detailed Acceptance Transfer Act, in which every chip and every crack on the iron surface of the tip were documented by military lawyers. The modern stage of studying the spear is associated with the application of natural science methods. In 2003, metals expert Robert Filer conducted a comprehensive study of the artifact using X-ray fluorescence analysis. The technical protocol of the study contains data that finally demystifies the object. The analysis showed that the main iron part of the tip was manufactured in the 7th century AD. Comparison of the iron's graininess with samples from various provinces of the Roman Empire revealed no matches with 1st century metal. The nail, forged into the center in its crystalline structure, corresponds to Roman products of the 4th century. The chemical composition of the silver wire binding the halves of the tip is characteristic of 11th century metallurgy, which coincides with the reign of Henry IV. Feser established that the spear represents a technological hybrid. Ancient iron from the 7th century was modernized by incorporating a nail from the 4th century, and then reinforced with silver and gold casings in the 11th and 14th centuries, respectively. This discovery holds colossal significance for the history of political technologies. The Spear of Destiny turned out not to be a monolithic artifact, but the product of prolonged work by imperial chancelleries to create undisputable proof of power. Each new layer of metal is an act of propaganda fixed in the material. Napoleon and Hitler hunted for a symbol that historians of the past had themselves constructed from disparate parts to legitimize their ambitions. The list of properties seized in 1945, including the spear, is today part of Austria's museum holdings. The fate of the Ahnenerbe archives concerning this matter remains partially sealed in the holdings of special services due to the presence there of data on agent methods of waging ideological war in Europe. The influence of the spear's history on the modern legal system is traced in international legislation on the restitution of cultural valuables. The precedent of returning the imperial regalia from Nuremberg to Vienna became the foundation for forming protocols on protecting national heritage amid military conflicts. Thus, the archaeology of power allows us to see, behind the veil of esoteric fabrications, the clear workings of state mechanisms that used iron and gold to encode the right to rule. The history of the Spear of Longinus is not a history of magic, but a history of bureaucracy, logistics, and the manipulation of symbols, which remain effective as long as society agrees to recognize their legal status. The analysis of documents confirms the fear of losing the spear was the fear of losing the legal basis of power, not the wrath of otherworldly forces. This study underscores the importance of a critical approach to sources and the necessity of separating political technologies from mythological accretions. With this, our investigation, based solely on archival materials and data from materials science, is concluded.